All research projects have stakeholders to consider, but the chances are that a collaborative project will have relatively more. It's worth taking time, particularly at the start of the project planning process, to consider your engagement with or your responsibility to stakeholders. This can help you to plan pathways to impact, as well as anticipating potential challenges and opportunities offered by different stakeholders. Potential stakeholders in your project could be specific named individuals or types of people, groups, or organisations. Stakeholders are people who might be able to or want to contribute to your project, the process, the planning, or the dissemination of the outcomes. They could offer support, either motivational, practical, or logistical. They could influence the success of your project. They might be affected by the process of undertaking the research, either directly or indirectly, or they may simply be interested in you or the research itself. Spend time with your collaborators thinking about these different perspectives and the different potential stakeholders. You can then generate a list or even a mind map of who they could potentially be. Think of all the different types of people and groups that could be stakeholders for your project. The more specific you can be, the better. Can you actually put names to the people who could be stakeholders to your project? This will help you to think more carefully about how to work with them effectively. A useful tool in stakeholder management is stakeholder mapping. Can you separate out your stakeholders in terms of how interested they are in the project, or how much power or influence they might have over the success of the project? Where would you place or map each of your stakeholders on this grid? According to where you place the stakeholders, your plans for how to manage them will vary. For those who are very interested and have a large amount of power or influence, you will need to manage them closely. But do you know what this might mean for your stakeholders? This group could include research staff on your project or your collaboration partners themselves. What will help you to manage them? You'll need to think carefully about what these stakeholders need and how you can effectively communicate with them and involve them in the project fully. The second group to plan for are those who will have more power and influence over the success of the project, but are likely to be less interested in your specific project. These could be your sponsors or perhaps your host institution. You need to keep these stakeholders satisfied. Do you know what this might involve? Are there, for example, specific reporting requirements, or are there activities where they expect you to be involved, meetings or perhaps public engagement events or involvement in commercialisation? The third group may be very interested in you or the research, but are unlikely to have much influence or impact over its success. This group could include other researchers in your particular discipline, or perhaps some public interest groups. You should have an idea or a plan for how you're going to keep these groups of stakeholders informed in your progress. Finally, you should monitor those who fall into the category of low interest and low influence. These could be other researchers in your department, for example, or some other public interest groups, or even the media or friends and family. You need to monitor these groups, as at some point something could change in your project, making them become much more interested or influential. For example, you could have some new findings, or you could have some new demands on departmental resources which will affect some of these stakeholders. And finally, as a result of a thorough stakeholder mapping and planning process, you may find that you now need to go back to your original project plans and amend them or add to them. You might have identified some new risks or some new opportunities, or some new plans for managing or engaging with your stakeholders. In any case, you should regularly review your stakeholder management plan and make sure that you add it to your meeting agenda.